Rebel Moon is Netflix and Zack Snyder's ambitious $160 million attempt at creating a grand space opera with an expansive universe. They hope to rival established franchises, primarily Star Wars, with the creation of their own. Unfortunately, judging by their first entry, they have failed. If you've watched the movie, you know why. The story sucked. To be more precise, there wasn't enough story to suck. Hi, my name is Pat, welcome to Rewrite, and today I'm gonna take a look at Rebel Moon. Zack Snyder is a talented director and established himself among other recognizable directors with his signature slow-mo action shots. He has a clear aptitude for portraying engaging fights and action scenes. This is a welcome trait among the sea of blurry and choppy fights. Snyder has a few good projects under his belt, most notably the Dawn of the Dead remake, 300, Watchmen, and the Justice League Snyder Cut. I personally liked Army of the Dead as well because it successfully blends different genres, zombies, and heist movies, but it wasn't anything to rave home about. It's noteworthy that whenever Snyder adapted someone else's stories, his projects did fairly well, but when it comes to creating his own stories and universes like Sucker Punch or Rebel Moon, the stories are underdeveloped and seemingly tacked on afterthoughts. The story's sole purpose in these movies is to move from one action scene to the next. The type of writing is fine if you're going to make a standalone action movie, but works against you when it comes to creating an expansive universe. A story that is nothing but good guys versus bad guys in space isn't gonna cut it, regardless of how good the action looks. The Rebel Moon universe has supposedly been in development for 10 years. Honestly, from what I've seen, it was completed in 10 days. At best. Rebel Moon's universe is garishly empty. There's no world building, or rather universe building. Let me elaborate. Nothing on the alien planets is more than an earth and fantasy creature, like a hippogriff or an oversized arachnid, who inexplicably developed a humanoid torso. Even the way the movie starts on a foreign moon somewhere in a foreign galaxy, they built a Viking village and plowed the fields like it's 750 AD. For an advanced civilization capable of space travel, so many things do not fit. Don't get me wrong, I'm aware that many rural and remote places on Earth in underdeveloped nations still use simple tools due to affordability or availability. And yes, you could make the argument that the Rebel Moon is such a remote location, but on the other hand, this was the perfect opportunity to establish a unique domestic characteristic of the moon in the form of flora or fauna. Take Star Wars as an example. If I say Tatooine, a clear image comes to mind. Tatooine is a desert planet with unique looking houses, native alien species, and their strange vehicles. It's these details that breathe life into their respective universes. Rebel Moon has almost none of these details. On occasion, there is one or the other odd-looking alien, but most of the individuals you see are humans. The reason for that is if you have aliens, you need to create a culture from scratch, and creating cultures and customs is a difficult task. In Rebel Moon's case, the easy thing to do was just skip and ignore everything. If you've made it this far, you know the drill. Click the like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more. One thing in particular bothered me. I expected the protagonist to get involved and actively move the plot forward, maybe discover a sinister plot, break the yoke of slavery, incite the Moonbite riot, anything, really. But no, nothing of the sort happens. There's one slow-mo fight and now their only option is rebellion. For the large majority of the movie, they move from one location to the next, stand around and watch as NPCs chosen by their convenient guide complete their side quests before joining their cause for no particular reason. After the protagonist has acquired her fellowship, they borrow an existing rebel force to fight their oppressor, only to be led into a trap by the most suspicious traitor ever. You know, the guy who convinced them to recruit the people with the biggest bounties on their heads, because that's apparently how you start a rebellion, gathering people without a cause. That is the entire plot of the movie. A two-faced bounty hunter rounds up rebels with bounties on their heads only to fail to capture them because of one measly farmer boy. The movie starts awkwardly in the middle of the saga. The majority of the universe's story and the introduction of important characters, including the protagonist, are established almost entirely through flashbacks. One of those flashbacks is the literal summary of the protagonist's life so far. This is a terrible way to introduce a character, because you don't get to know and like or dislike them. You're simply given a rundown of who they're supposed to be. Good guy, bad guy. Bringing the audience up to speed with their previously on Rebel Moon snippets isn't the way to go if you want to establish an expansive universe. Netflix's Rebel Moon is failing for the same reasons that DC's Justice League and Universal's Dark Universe failed. They're skipping steps, especially the most important one, making one good movie first. They're sadly already calculating the profits of Rebel Moon 5 in 2030 and how to cut its budget. You need to introduce an interesting conflict first and then expand on it, which to be fair was done but executed miserably. You're supposed to care about this village full of nobodies, but then the movie escalated too quickly into gathering individual intergalactic rebels, condensing everything into one long montage. The movie kept focusing on the wrong things. I'll elaborate on that in the rewrite section. There are two possible reasons I can think of as to why the story starts the way it does. One, lazy writing.
What did you do on the farm?
Planting, cataloging seeds, and making sure
that sounds great.
Or two, paying homage to Star Wars. Snyder has mentioned he wanted to work on Star Wars for a long time, and Rebel Moon is his way of doing a Star Wars movie.
Better for the movie that I ended up having to do it outside of the Star Wars universe, because
as many of you know, the first Star Wars started with Episode 4, not Episode 1. According to George Lucas, it was done for storytelling reasons and technical limitations.
Very difficult in terms of costs. It's always a limiting factor. But even if you take that out, there were things that just couldn't be done, regardless of how much money you had.
This isn't true. When it was released in 1977, it was released as simply Star Wars. Following its success, it was later changed to Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, to expand the story if needed. Sly move, a bit underhanded though. But this demonstrates well how a successful expansive movie universe is created. Make one good popular movie first, like John Wick, Iron Man, or The Fast and the Furious, and the interests garnered by that one movie allows you to expand on the characters and the story. I'm not a fan of Star Wars opening crawl, as the only reason for it was to pay homage to the Flash Gordon movies from the 1930s, but it fits the franchise. It's a surprisingly effective way to immerse the audience in the story because reading focuses your attention. The brief intense focus is carried over into the subsequent movie. Pair it with a snappy paced, engaging hook and you've managed to get the ball rolling. I will say this though, logically Star Wars 4 does not have the best start. Ideally you'd start with the acquisition of the MacGuffin, the theft of the plants, but that would slow the pace of the movie considerably and you'd run the risk of creating a confusing hook with lots of off-screen explanation. Therefore the way it was handled was perfectly fine. Star Wars Episode 4 has a well-paced hook introducing important characters and the different factions they belong to early on, and it gets the MacGuffin chase and urgency going straight away. In Rebel Moon we are treated to a past event narrated by Sir Anthony Hopkins, and as nice as that is, it is mostly meaningless in the grand scheme of things. Also, it's weird because if it's an empire, it should be the emperor's assassination, not the king's. After that, Belisarius takes the reins and orders the soldiers to hush the whispers of rebellion echoing in the farthest corners of the empire, and we see none of that. The imagery supporting the narration is a random spaceship floating in space, rather than the assassination of the king. The movie starts with a large disconnect between story and visuals and then just keeps going. This is a surefire way to kill the audience's attention super quickly. It's followed up by a random farming scene and a very lengthy evil empire encroaching on poor hardworking villagers scene, which is a tad bit too reminiscent of the Inglourious Basterds opening scene while lacking any of the suspense. All in all, the movie takes too long to switch gears, and when it does, it's for an obscure reason. In Star Wars, it was about stopping a space station the size of a planet capable of blowing up planets and shifting the tide of battle. In Rebel Moon, it's saving a village girl from gang rape. It's unpleasant, sure, but intergalactic rebellion worthy? I'm not so sure about that. The difference in magnitude regarding the reasons are just so unfathomably far apart, it's ridiculous. In this section, I usually focus on remedying one major flaw or a few minor flaws that when changed could create a much more interesting story. With Rebel Moon, there is nothing outright wrong, but that is because it has too little story to go wrong. After gathering a merry band of rebels, they are ambushed and survive. That's essentially the story of Rebel Moon. Even John Wick has a richer story than Rebel Moon. A retired hitman seeks revenge for the murder of his puppy, which was the final present from his late wife to help him cope with his grief once she was deceased. Granted, in the John Wick franchise, the action is the meat on the bone, while the simplicity of the story draws you in. It's the good action that makes you stick around. In Rebel Moon, the simplicity prevents you from getting immersed in the story and universe. In all fairness, there are interesting story elements like what happened to the princess and how her ability to resurrect ties into the Empire's plans to conquer the universe. It's just not developed enough, and we don't even know if this is crucial to the upcoming plot. These mysteries should have been better incorporated into the movie, like Luke's dad in Star Wars. If the Empire is creating immortal soldiers, the movie should have focused on that and give a glimpse into what such immortal soldiers could mean for the universe as a whole, as well as what the cost of or hindrances of producing such soldiers is. Rebel Moon's story had potential, but the producers, writers and the director alike, inability to create an interesting story or characters has all but doomed the franchise. I will watch the second part, hoping that the story will pick up. If that doesn't happen, I and many others will drop this franchise. Just to give you an idea, I'd have changed the hook considerably. I'd start by assigning the protagonist as a princess bodyguard, then have her fail to protect the princess and believe the princess was assassinated alongside the entire imperial family. The start remains largely the same, but this way you establish a personal connection to the event. The protagonist is exiled instead of executed for her failure thanks to her connections. She is now a farmer on a faraway planet. There she encounters one of the assailants again, and when trying to get revenge for her past failure, he lets it slip that the princess is still alive and she now serves a greater purpose within the empire, just like Belisarius had planned. A hook like this doesn't just personalize the motive to Rebel, also adds much needed mystery and intrigue to get the audience invested in the story and continue watching. I was on the fence about making this video because Netflix has announced the Snyder cut of Rebel Moon. I hope this isn't becoming a thing now, releasing a shitty version just to release a second version how it was meant to be. From a financial standpoint, this might make sense, as it gives the movie the ability to cash in twice, but if it becomes the norm, people will eschew the first release and wait for the final release, therefore more likely to cannibalize the sales than increase them. If you can't tell by now, I was sorely disappointed by this movie. My expectations weren't high to begin with, but this still manages to fall short. Picking the guy who wants to write John Wick fanfiction may not have been the best choice to pen this type of movie. Anyways, with that said, are you excited for the next part or on the verge of dropping it like I am? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support this channel. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again.